computers very often. It's frightening.
We're streaming live.
We're streaming
Dun,
live.
dun, dun.
Come on, I need to hit the mute button on this page as soon as it gets put up.
Dun, dun, dun.
See?
That was perfect.
All right, good meeting.
Of the void. There.
See, I can't avoid the tech issues. I always get that feedback because I can't get it muted fast enough. All right. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, for our 4th episode of the Ysgithrian Allthing. Mistress Ari Uisnigh joins us tonight. And now the Southern Belles of Ysgithrian are going to have a chat.
I wonder how thick our accents are going to get the longer we talk and drink.
I give us 10 minutes because last time we made it 15.
Yeah, but once upon a time.
Oh, honey.
Oh, you did that so good.
Did you just know honey us?
He did.
Oh.
So,
That's some sass there, young man. I don't know what I'm going to be able to do with you.
Nothing. I'm
Can't
absolutely.
take you anywhere.
And you really shouldn't, especially not on a speakerphone.
but it's so much fun.
Oh.
It is fun.
Oh, all right.
Okay. So how's the being grounded eternally working out for you?
My muse is dead. She's like drunk in the corner and blowing me off. I don't know. I managed to get a pair of scrolls out the door though, so they're done. They're out. People will get them. Now I have a backlog knighting scroll. I have a Volcheck's knighting scroll. At this point, it may end up covered in glitter. I don't know.
I would so pay you for that one. I would love to see that one.
Well, you know, at Australia, he got his holding scroll for his knighting.
Holding scroll?
Yeah,
The holding scroll.
Runa and Sigrid made a temporary knighting scroll for him on poster board. They went to Kids Corner, I think, and it's got feathers and beads and chivalry spelled with an S, and it's a big tower, and it's glitter glue, and I'm thinking, that's the best knighting scroll ever. Why do you want me to make one?
Why do you want to downgrade?
Awesome.
And there's other knights going, I want one of those. Oh. I think we completely underestimate the power of just not taking ourselves seriously when a peerage happens because, dude.
So last time I actually saw something you were working on, and I'm holding tiny, tiny little Post-it notes.
Oh, the smallest scroll I ever did was a business card size.
Weren't you working on verbiage in something this size though? Inside a bigger scroll?
It was. I can fit about, when I do calligraphy, my smallest calligraphy to date roughly equates to about 9.8, somewhere between 8 and 10 point typeface if you're looking at a printer.
Makes me
I can fit 8 to 10 lines per inch.
Makes me cross-eyed from here.
10 lines per.
Yeah, there's a picture out there somewhere with a penny where the capital would be and then the text next to it.
Holy.
You have to understand, I like the bar to be high enough for me to feel challenged. So whenever somebody comes up with something really cool and I think that's awesome, but then I need to throw the bar higher.
Okay.
And somebody's like, look what I did. And I was like, that's really great. I want to beat it. Especially when it comes to Scribble stuff. So micro calligraphy and micro scrolls are a thing. And yeah.
Yeah, I have seen this with you, and it amazes me. So tell us about your start in the SCA.
My start, okay, so I'm an SCA kid. I blame my parents for my failures.
You blame your parents for your failures. Okay, so I'm going to ask the loaded question here.
Uh-huh.
I'm an SCA kid, born and raised. Okay, how did you make it through the teen years and still keep coming back?
I got in so much trouble.
Because we all see it, you know, and you've got kiddos of your own, and you know, we've got our kiddos, and we see from about the age of 12 till they're 17, 18, trying to keep them engaged is woo.
So for me, it wasn't so much a matter of keeping me engaged. I was fully engaged from day one. This is my thing, you know, like the Middle Ages and cultures and history and all that. I'm just one of the, let me backtrack a little bit. I am the product of multi-generational breeding of engineers. Okay.
You never stood a chance.
My
engineering.
My grandfather's, you know, so my Irish grandfather, his whole family immigrated from Ireland in the 1920s. So he raised us. We spent a lot of time, because my mom always worked nights. My dad was TDY a lot. Hi, I'm a child of the space program, military kid. We moved a lot. So we spent a lot of time at his house during the week so we could go to school. And that meant that we didn't have to keep changing schools a lot. And so every night he would tell us fairy tales, proper Irish fairy tales, like teeth and blood and everything, all still in them. Nightly stories of things like Mr. O'Cooley, King of Little People, and the Banshee, and how to deal with the fairy folk and all that. So there was a lot of that. And my grandmother on my father's side was a deep love of history and cultures and Rome and Greece and England and all of that. So growing up, you're a kid, you just kind of go with your folks and you do the things. And there's a picture floating around. I think Sigrid has a copy of it. And me, I think I'm 8 in this dress. And it's like, I loved the hell out of this dress. It was a white bell sleeve, little traditional Middle Ages dress that you see all of the women in the pre-Raphaelite paintings wearing, with the long tippets and everything. And I loved this dress. I thought it was the best dress ever made. I wore it till there were holes in it. I didn't care if it had a yellow rope tying it shut. That meant nothing to me. I love my dress. So round about the time, you know, so all through that, we're coming, you know, we go to the things and you have a good time, but it just kind of washes over you because you're going and you're doing stuff with your parents and you hang out with the kids. And then round about 11, after my dad's father passed away, my grandmother, she had always wanted to go to England because when she was a little girl, her mother took her to England. Actually, her grandmother took her to England. So she was there. She did like, you know, a month in England with her grandmother, and my grandmother wanted the exact same thing. That's all she wanted to do with part of the inheritance, was to go to England and relive that and see all these places again. So she bundled me up, put me on an airplane, and the flight from Los Angeles to Houston, she realized that she did not physically have enough reading material on hand to keep me entertained. Yeah. So in Houston, she went to the airport bookshop and picked up 2 books for me. One on Irish fairy tales, like this thick, and then Rex Stout's Men and Gods, which is like, a very easy crack addict introduction to Greek mythology.
Okay.
And I say it that way because it's very slender. It's only about 150 pages, and it's written in very plain, easy to get into language. And she handed it to her 11-year-old granddaughter, who by the time we got to London had finished reading both books. And then we had a month in England. And so we went to England and Wales and just to Edinburgh, and all over we drove. And later on, I would do a similar kind of trip in Ireland, but we went everywhere. So I got to spend 3 days with her going to the British Museum. And this is way back in the 80s. So I got to walk up this close to the Rosetta Stone.
Mm.
This is me in my little corduroy skirt and my little schoolgirl shirt and my knee socks and my penny loafers with my head, with my hair pulled back in a headband, and her in her wool tweed skirt and her blue blazer, and we looked every inch the nanny and her schoolgirl.
Nice. Nice.
And so people kept asking us for directions.
That's awesome.
And then we would speak and they wouldn't believe us. And I'd go tearing off because it was like, there's something else I got to see. So 3 days of me at 11 years old, loose in the British Museum. I was set for life.
Yeah.
And to get to see the Elgin marbles, which, if for those that don't know what the Elgin marbles were, they are actually the carvings and friezes from the Temple of Athena on the Acropolis in Athens. So the Parthenon.
Yeah.
The Elgin marbles, they're called the Elgin marbles because Lord Elgin took them from Greece and brought them back to England. And there's this long fight about, will they please damn well give them back? And the British are like, no, they're national treasures. And the Greeks are going,
yes, ours.
yes, national treasures. Can we have them back? So I'm not going to get into whether it's right for museums to have them or not. I think the Victorian era and the eras all before the Great Wars were, and even during the wars, were rife with other countries liberating pieces of artwork for their own safety.
Mm-hmm.
And so I consider it to have been an amazing opportunity to see those pieces and experience those things. But to be able to say that I got to go up and pet the Rosetta Stone is like one of those things that it's like, this is back when they were still smoking on airplanes.
Yeah.
They would let you just waltz onto an airplane with a cigarette in hand, the world is a very different place from when we were kids.
Yes, it is.
It is, and admittedly, it is a better place from when we were kids.
Yes.
Good, bad, or indifferent, yes.
Yeah, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, I remember going into restaurants, and there was the smoking section and the non-smoking section, and I don't care how far on that side of the world they set you in the non-smoking section, the whole place smelled like an old ashtray that had been left out in the rain for 3 weeks.
Yeah. No.
So conducive to having a good dinner.
Oh yeah.
So I'm trying to think how I want to phrase this.
Ooh,
I know.
interesting.
Well, okay. So I'm going to fangirl for a moment because you do all the things and you make it look so easy.
Oh.
However, even though I know it's not easy, to the rest of the world, that's how it looks. So tell us about your greatest art failures. Because they do exist.
I've had lots.
Are there any that stand out in your mind?
When my first forays into making sealing wax, like not for sealing bottles sealing wax, but making seals, like pendant seals sealing
yeah.
wax. I got it in my head I was going to do it all correctly. Go me. So one of the important ingredients to these things is pitch, specifically pine resin. And the pine trees I had accessible to me at the time I was learning this new trick were pinyon pines, which not that far off, but at least they bleed resin all the time. So you can go and you can pick it up and do your thing with it. So I went and I collected a whole bunch of pine resin. Go me. Then I went and I got beeswax. There's nothing telling you the proper recipe for this. You figure this shit out, right? So I learned many things in this, like you have to clarify your pine resin.
Yeah.
And when you do this, do not put it directly into a metal pot. You will throw away the metal pot.
Icky stuff.
They're called pitch pots for a reason, boys and girls. So I had the resin and then I'm like, well, there's bugs in this. There's pine needles in this. There's dirt in this. There's bark in this. Okay, now we know why amber is full of crap. Okay, so then I learned you needed a double boiler because you have to soften it over a thing. How do you scoop out the goo, the junk without getting the resin? Because you want the resin left behind. Don't use metal spoons. Make sure your implements are hot.
Yeah.
It finally came down to using takeaway chopsticks that I didn't give a shit about, that I hadn't broken apart. And I would sit there over the double boiler, and don't do this inside your house because turpentine fumes are toxic.
Turpentine fumes.
Turpentine comes from boiling off the spirit off of resin.
Yep.
So you have to do this outside. Because I'm inside going, why am I getting woozy? Oh, shit. I should take this outside.
You know why I'm hers.
So then I'm standing outside over my Coleman stove, working a double boiler with a pair of chopsticks and some melted pine resin, trying to fish out all the crap in the pine resin. And I finally got it to what I deemed clear enough. Then I'm like, great, now for the wax. Wait, I don't have all my stuff put together yet. Shit. So I had to take it off the heat, to which point it started solidifying immediately.
Yep.
Go get my beeswax, which I hadn't cut up into pieces. I hadn't shaved down yet. I hadn't even gotten remotely near ready. Oh, and the colored pigments for making the wax, the different colors. Oh, I have to go get those. Oh, wait, those are toxic too. Let me put on gloves and a mask. So what was supposed to be, and what now is maybe a 2-hour process, took me 8 hours of futzing around with this, making every mistake you could possibly make along the way, abandoning it for 2 days, coming back to it and trying again. At which point I also realized that during the final steps, you also need to have your cookie sheet in the freezer to get it nice and cold so that you can actually work with the wax faster. And put wax paper down on the cookie sheet, because otherwise you're not getting it off the metal cookie sheet. Remember what I said about wax and metal and resin. So in the end, it comes down to clarify your resin. Make sure you have your shaved beeswax ready to go. When your resin is clear, pour in your beeswax bits, melt it all up. Introduce your powdered pigment, stir that up. Make sure it's the right kind of color that you like. Go get your cookie sheet lined with wax paper out of the freezer. And now they have those lovely silicone mats, which is even better. I love those things.
Right.
Go get that out of the freezer. bring it outside to where you're working, plunk it down on the table, hope the 100-degree day that you decided to try this out in isn't going to heat it up too fast. Pour out your pot, well, your bowl, your Pyrex bowl, into the silicone mat on the cookie sheet. And while it's cooling the wax down, pray to hell you can scrape it out with your wonky, the other side of your wonky chopsticks, enough to get enough of it out of the Pyrex bowl that you almost want to throw away, but you can clean. And then roll up your sheet and make sure you work it all until it solidifies, and then you get it up and you basically work it into a tube, kind of like you're doing herb butter but wax.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the wax that you melt to, like, you see all these people putting it in spoons and, oh, it's pretty, and then pour it out, and they do like videos on YouTube of people doing sealing wax. That way, no. This is wax that you have to cut off a chunk, or if you're smart ahead of time, when you're mixing your wax, you break it off into smaller balls of the size that you're going to work with. Roll it up. And then you got to get it warm again so that when you go to make your seal impression, it works. Oh, dust your seal matrix with talcum powder.
And this is the lesson of a lifetime right here. Though you are made of magic, even you have your moments.
I honestly, every single art I've ever tried, I have spent hundreds of hours failing at. I just don't show people.
So I asked that question because for the rest of us, we do see you as being made of magic. Hence, remember what I said earlier, I'm going to fangirl a little bit.
Magic and don't count. I know.
Because for those of us on the outside of the world, we see you do these awesome things. And because we don't see your failures, we don't see the struggle that goes behind these awesome things you make, it gives the perception that you are perfect at everything you do every time you touch it.
I like to tell people with the calligraphy, look, guys, I've been doing calligraphy for 40 years. No joke. I am old enough to have been doing calligraphy for 40 years.
Shh, we're not going to talk age.
I have been doing Illuminate 4 decades.
That'll work.
That works.
That works. We'll go
I've been doing illumination for 3 decades. So I have, hundreds of hours of practice behind what I do with scrolls.
Well, yes. And then you take on problem children like me, who says, oh, I want to do this thing. And I dive in the deep in the pool and you go,
you know how I learned how to tablet weave, right? Have you heard how I learned tablet weaving?
No.
So Ivan likes to tell people this story. I was making Yanka's laurel cloak, her coat for her laurel. And I decided that it needed to have, it's a laurel thing. I've spent all these hours embroidering and appliquing and doing all of this gorgeous stuff with it, but it needed trim. And I wanted to do running laurel wreath trim. Well, I couldn't find any anywhere. And I was like, well, that doesn't look too hard. You just turn the cards and it's a pattern. It's like a computer. You just do the thing and you throw you move the yarn back and forth and it happens, right? Magic. So, never having tablet woven in my life, I get a hold of her husband, Master Ivan, and I say, well, His Grace now, Ivan, and I say, hey, I need a pattern for running laurel leaves so I can make trim for Yannick's coat. Him, not thinking to ask if I knew what the hell I was doing, gave me a pattern. And so I looked up in a book and I went, oh, that's how cards work. Threaded all the cards, started the turning. I have a loom that can hold 16 yards. So when I want to learn something, I warp up the loom, and it took me a bit to figure out how to warp the cards and everything else like that. And then I had it and I was like, okay, how do I start this? And I fought with it for 1.5 yards. of absolute garbage. And then I figured it out. And then I figured out that Ivan hadn't given me both of the reverses. So I had to then go and pattern another reverse for how to reverse it in the right spot. He would have done it differently, but this is me not knowing what the fuck I'm doing. I'm just doing it because, God damn it, I needed trim. So I was going to make trim. Jumped right into, it turns out threaded in tablet weaving is the deep end of the tablet weaving pool. I didn't know this. And I turned out the trim and it's really great. And he's got some of it and she's got some on her cloak. I used some of it to tie my box shut. I've got a big wooden camp box and it's wool. It's really strong. This stuff ain't going anywhere. And several months later, I show up in his card weaving class for how to do Egyptian diagonals because I was figuring, well, I kind of enjoyed it. I may as well go learn another thing. And he takes one look at me and says, what the hell are you doing in here? I'm like, but I wanted to learn the diagonals. He's like, you already know how to weave. I'm like, no, I don't. I've never done these before. At which point he's like, your first weaving was the, yeah.
All right. Well, tell the story of the cornet that you made and almost killed us with.
So backing up a little bit where you were talking about don't do things in your house, especially when they're toxic.
Oh, honey.
So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago,
Call 3.
remember when I decided I was going to learn how to make cornets? And I wanted to learn how to make hinged cornets? Well, awesome. I played with stainless steel. I played with the plasma cutter. We were going awesome.
Talk about the deep end with the stainless.
His Grace, Duke Arthur, proceeded to tell me much later that I did something I was not technically supposed to be able to do because I soldered brass onto stainless steel. I was not supposed to be able to do that. These metals were not supposed to adhere.
What happens when you don't know the rules?
So I'm in the kitchen. I have silver solder. I have torch, and I am going to town. And probably about 30 minutes into this, he starts feeling kind of nauseated and not feeling real good. And I'm starting to not feel so great myself. And so I'm putting everything away. And he steps outside to get some fresh air. And it dawns on him that I had given us
Zinc poisoning.
So he comes barely back in the house, pours 2 big old glasses of milk, and he said, here, drink this. I'm like, I don't feel good. He goes, I know, drink this, you will feel better. So he puts milk down us. And after everything settles out, he's like, honey, you can't do that in the house anymore. He's like, you gave us zinc poisoning. You have to do that outside. So when you talked about getting woozy, I'm like, I do belong to her because I get a zinc poisoning.
I think we've all done something like really, really dumb and nearly killed ourselves by doing dumb shit in the house. Also, pro tip for those wanting to get into casting with pewter, do not cast pewter in your kitchen.
No, do not. No, do not. No.
Take that shit outside.
Outside, yes, please. The second you overheat it, the zinc fumes off. Yes.
I'm just letting people know. I have not done this in my house, but I want people to know because everybody's like, oh, pewter casting's easy. Yes, casting is do that shit outside.
So we do have a question here, and this question is for you.
Me, okay.
Why milk?
The best way I can describe it is it binds with the zinc and it helps flush the zinc out of your body.
All I can tell you is 20 minutes after we drank the milk, we felt better.
Anyway, the specifics of that is we were using a zinc chloride flux it's a very, very aggressive flux to break through the oxide layer on the stainless steel so that we could get the molecular connection that we needed for the solder. So zinc chloride, flux, off gases zinc, and you inhale zinc fumes and you start feeling like the flu.
And Ari's favorite phrase, yay, science!
Yay, science, yes.
I love science.
How did you, hi,
She pushed her way through the
how
door.
did you get in here? We had the door closed and now you're opening doors.
It's your fault for naming the dog Tiny Satan.
I didn't name the dog,
Her name is technically Xena.
which is
Technically.
actually kind of appropriate because she won't be stopped.
However, we're not actually the ones that named her. Sierra named her Tiny Satan when
I
she
see.
met her, and it really stuck. However, here's the thing: we're on a Zoom meeting. The minute we're on a Zoom meeting, she is 100% convinced this is where she belongs. This is her place. So
That's all right. She's cute.
But Tiny Satan stuck because she's 9 pounds of fury.
Especially when somebody walks in the door. Holy
So,
cow.
all right. So back to topic. Okay.
Sorry.
So
Okay.
we talked about your pitch that you were making and not feeling so good. The only thought that went through my mind is, good Lord, how many examples do I need that I belong to her? Because you talked about don't cast pewter in the house. Yeah, really bad idea. Learn from experience. You know, it
that's
just
not
it
too
seems
much explain.
simple. I had a little pot and hey, right here on the bar will work because I can bless you.
Thank you.
Sigrid says you do collect the problem children.
I
don't
So
think
let me stop
problem
you there. My kids are not problem children. All of you. A lot of you came to me. I think you're one of the few I actually went, no, you're mine now. So that happened at a Battlemore because you were having a time of it and feeling like chum in the water. And I went, no,
Yep.
you come hide behind me. You're mine now. And then you put me in crushed penne velvet with no hems.
I did.
Oh, horrific.
Shall never speak of.
No, I am very proud of this because
I got Ronnie. I did get Ronnie, Ciela. I got her in the will.
you got, oh, that's true. You did get her in the will.
And I love her and I miss her.
So, all right. So the crushed velvet story.
Oh,
Go for it.
When she decided, no, you belong to me, I said, okay, but you got to do a newbie night with me. And she's like, okay. So we go to Battlemore. It's Battlemore 1, which that had its own.
Is that like prepaid penance?
Oh,
we had to leave. We ran out of tents.
Yeah, we her yurt, this big ass yurt, literally moved 3 feet.
Oh yeah, that was Windmore.
Yeah, that was Battlemore 1 where we were up on the hill.
Really?
And so we get there, and Mr. Snora and I were very, very set on the idea that we are doing a newbie night. We're going to pull out
Brilliant.
the oldest, gaudiest crap we had from when we first started.
I don't have any.
Yeah, she didn't have any.
Well, she can't fit any of the stuff that she first started in because she's like grown up.
Well, there's that. Shush. That logic doesn't apply to this story.
Yay, science.
So the newbie night comes around, and I'm pulling out this god-awful angel wing,
Oh, brilliant.
maroon crushed velvet off the shoulder with acrylic trim.
Nice.
Okay.
Was it metallic?
Elastic. Yes, it had metallic and it was
Excellent.
elastic.
Excellent.
Okay. And she's like, well, I don't have anything newbie, because the rule was no cornets, no medallions. You left all of that at home.
Nice.
Okay. So I come bouncing out of my tent with this dark maroon.
It was green.
Oh, was it the green one?
It was the green one, because I went back into my tent and put on my bright orange knee socks.
Oh, that's
Nice.
right. Oh, and it had the faux suede keyhole neckline. Look at her reaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So
Let's get ready.
so this faux suede, only problem was the cuffs were too tight. So I took a real fast pair of scissors and I cut them off.
Good.
So there's
Okay. Now they're poofy sleeves. So now they're hanging down to here. No hem.
Elastic, or they like stretch?
Yeah,
velvet?
I had to take the elastic out because it was too
darn.
small.
Okay.
So
So
stretch velvet.
yeah, it was stretch velvet.
Excellent.
Now
Excellent.
we get her in this contraption, and if she could have found a way to levitate inside of these clothes, she would have. But she did it, and we bounced down to town square.
Well, this was, you missed a bit. You missed a bit. So we're sitting in camp, and I'm curled up in a chair trying to be as small and inconspicuous as possible in almost fluorescent green stretch penne velvet and bright orange socks and green pants. And Mariana, and I've got a big mug that I'm trying to hide behind, full of beer. And Mariana comes bouncing into camp looking for Nora. And she bounces past, starts talking to people. I say something. She turns around and goes, Ari?
You have seen my shame.
All of my husband's people were mocking me.
So we get down to town square. Now, admittedly, at this point, I had been wearing linens and things long enough to know that I am miserably hot.
Yep.
Because you got to remember, this Battlemore was middle of June.
It was June, it was hot, and it was windy as fuck.
So we get
Excuse
down
my
to
language, people.
where she's trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. I'm baking out because at this point, I had been wearing my linens for years, and I'm comfortable in my linens, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how did I ever survive in crushed velvet?
Drink more.
Okay.
I was drinking more. I was using that solution.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
So
That works.
I think we hung out down in town square for about an hour, and then we bounced back to camp. Okay. And she's like, oh God, I'm going to change clothes. We're like, no, we're newbie night's not over yet. Well, one gentleman,
Fine.
and I don't remember who, but Master somebody or other was on a golf cart and pulled past the camp, and you went running out there and you're like, they have me in crushed velvet, and he laughed at her.
That would be Adam the persistent. I think he's changed his last name, but we went to college together at UNM. And Master Adam and I were the part of the founding members of the College of Bladewind. And true story, I saw the Bladewind kids at that Battlemore still flying the banner I had made
Awesome.
decades before.
Awesome.
And just so it has a white wolf on it. So it's white with a red bar, and then the white wolf facing a frontie with, it's sitting there and it's looking very prim and proper with its tail. And so the joke when I made that banner was, it was a portrait of my cat. Cherry and silver are the University of New Mexico colors. And I was like, well, I'm just going to make a banner, applique the thing down, made it, it's that trigger. I made it out of trigger. The thing weighed a ton, and it was virtually indestructible. And so I made this thing, sewed it all together, And we go bopping by, and Adam's like, you have to see this. He puts me in the golf cart, and we go by, and there's my banner. He's like, you have to tell him. I'm like, no, I don't want to hurt their wee brains. And he's like, no, you have to tell them. So we go driving up. I go, hey. And they're like, yeah, hi, I'm Ari. They're like, hi, Ari. I made that banner. Really? That's so cool. We still use it. I'm like, yeah, it's my cat. And we drove off.
So
Well, of
she
course,
gets back to camp after this. Now, I didn't know this part of the story, but she gets back to camp. Now, you understand this entire time she's running around in this god-awful crushed velvet. Okay? She gets back to camp and she is like, can I change clothes now? At this point, I had bailed out of my crushed velvet as well and put on my linens.
because you knew better, yeah.
So she goes, she changed clothes. And the next morning, and that's when I said, I will take a belt from you. Now, Sam has asked the question, what did you do to deserve such cruel and unusual punishment? It was not punishment.
Nope, it was a deal.
It was, in my mind, Ari was this Laurel god. But I needed this god to be
Human.
with my level of crazy sometimes, which includes putting on god awful crushed velvet just to go have a good time and laugh and giggle. Because I had to find a relate. In my mind, I had to find a relate. And being goofy and silly was my relate point. And Ari went, okay, let's do it. Again, she wanted to levitate out of her skin. If she could have levitated the clothes where it never touched her, she absolutely would have. However, she did it. And what that told me right then and there is this is who I want to be when I grow up. I want to be this god, but still have the ability to come down from Olympus and go, let's drink some whiskey and have a good time. So I knew right then that she was my peer. No questions asked. And Lala says she's a terrible instigator. No, honey, you are not. You are not. You plant the most fabulous, fun ideas and you go, oh, let's do the thing.
She's
and
a fabulous instigator.
She is a fabulous instigator.
I like to wind people up and see what happens.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah, 10 years later, hey, Ari, I'm going to make the thing. Okay, have fun. That's toxic. Don't do it in the house.
No, I steered you towards the zinc chloride.
No.
I brought that on myself.
No, there was something else. Oh, bone. When I decided I was going to start working on bone.
Oh, God.
I called Ari and said, hey, I want to do the thing. And she's like,
Wear a damn
okay,
mask.
do the thing. Wear a mask. It's toxic.
Yes.
So
you don't want that crap in your lungs.
Yeah. So that's the story of Ari in the crushed velvet. And it is one of my longtime favorite memories of you.
I did get a little revenge back because I was so soused by the time somebody broke out Star Walk on their iPad to do astronomy with. That I'm laying on the ground with this iPad like this over my head doing Star Walk, which for those who don't know what it is, it's an astronomy program that shows you all the different constellations, and the stars were beautiful, but I couldn't remember the names of the constellations. So I broke out Star Walk and I'm looking at the sky. I was like, hey guys, watch this. And I put my finger on it and I spun the universe.
Oh, she did. Was it Lala or Richard that was like, whoa, I've had too much to drink for that? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Lala.
And then I dropped it on my face. So, you know.
Well, and that night we had literally her yurt moved 3 feet, I think.
I've never been so scared in my life at an event as I was that night.
Yeah. We lost the upright to the kitchen pole. Richard the brewer lost his tent completely. We wound up putting him inside my tent with us. And I think Lala lost her tent too.
She did, and she lost her shelves.
Yeah.
The only reason I didn't lose the yurt is because I had moved every heavy object inside of it to the windward side and wind braced it with poles. So like tape and poles on the inside. But we had 80 to 85-mile-an-hour straight line winds all night off the mountain.
God.
It sounded like a freight train. And I spent the entire night looking at the clock, telling myself, if we only make it to 5, we'll all live. I didn't sleep all night. I was so scared. And I'm like, done. And we actually packed up and left because we ran out of tents.
Yeah, the next morning, we duct taped the poles together just to hold the kitchen up long enough to get us fed so we could tear down and get out. Oh, that's right. So Lala says, y'all's doors lined up in the morning. Ari was 3 feet to the east.
Yeah.
Oh, Lala said her tent did make it, but man, so we had a bench. We put a bench in the center of the kitchen and took what was left of the longest pole to hold the kitchen up just long enough to get us all fed and get packed down. And we wound up bailing to my dad's house to shower and get out of the wind.
Yeah.
Now, it was one of those situations that
you bond.
You do bond.
Yeah.
You can't help but bond. And, you know, Ashley Rao says, sounds brutal. Yes, but like Ari just said, there is nothing that's going to bond you together faster than making sure that everybody in your camp is safe and taken care of. And, you know,
yeah, that shared adversity is, that's kind of what we're hoping to pull out of this COVID thing, is a shared adversity kind of bonds us together a little tighter.
Yeah.
And brings us closer together with the people that really matter in our lives.
So Sigrid asks if that Battlemore won. I'm pretty sure I know what the answer to this is, but I'll let you answer instead. Was it scarier than the tornado war, Gulf NATO?
I would say it was a longer session of terror. So I am growing up following the space program. I have lived in Florida, Louisiana, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. And while living in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas, I have lived through multiple hurricanes and tornadoes, and Hurricane Alicia, which like completely removed an entire house from our family. I don't do well with high winds. And so Battlemore was really that, oh God, we're all gonna die, we just need to make it. But I still had shelter over my head. Gulf NATO, the difference with that is I was at the Gulf War where we had I think they figured it was either an F1 or an F2 tornado hopped the site. I mean, it's a huge tornado. And we are lucky it did not touch down in Gulf Wars, because we would have had a lot of dead.
Yeah.
Because we're all outside, but it basically jumped the site. And I had come straight off the ravine battle with Master Domingo and gone to Company St. Michael's for dinner, because actually we went to the White Scarf Circle and it started to rain. So we walked all the way up to Company St. Michael, which is right by the front gate. And they had their big tents, like a circus tent. And we went in there to have dinner. And so they were in the middle of making dinner when this thing hit. And it was actually my first encounter with Recare, even though neither of us actually got to realize that we were within 20 feet of each other. Because all of a sudden the wind kicked up, and so everybody dove for all the poles, and I'm still in my fencing armor, right? Yeah. And so we dove for the poles, and I was trying to hold up and keep like one of these 20-foot poles from falling over while they're putting out the stoves. And there was somebody, you know, and I know I was crying. It was scary as hell. And then we had to bail out of the tent. So I bailed out of the tent straight onto the road in the middle of all of that wind, like everything I'm scared of in my life right there. And I'm in the middle of it, and walked the half, you know, quarter mile, half mile down the road to get to the Green Dragon. And I'm like, I get there and I just remember the door in this arm like this outside the, you know, waving. And then I got inside, and eventually I am told that they peeled me out of my fighting coat. They peeled me out of my chainmail, and then they wrapped me up, and they had all of these people in there because it was a building. It is a building with a flagstone floor. And they wrapped me up in somebody's cloak, I don't know whose. And people piled on to warm me up because I was shaking so bad and crying and trying to get me warm in front of the little fire that they have. They have like a fire pit in the middle with like the chimney top. And then they got me warm enough. They had other people coming in, and then they had declared it the medical point for the war after the tornado came over. And by that time I was warm enough. They had other people coming in that, you know, I had to move, and I crawled up underneath one of the tables there, which turns out that Master Indrixus of Callantir and his wife were sitting at. They couldn't get me out from under the table. And so one of the medics, one of the chirurgeons came by, who had long since shifted into their, hi, I'm a professional medical individual with a real world license to my name. And they Xanaxed my ass because I wouldn't go upstairs, because the last thing I wanted to do was go upstairs. I had shelter. And Master Indrixus and his wife, I think it was his wife, managed to coax me out. My happily drunk self now, still scared and wet, coaxed me out from under the table with a bag of Raisinets, saying, "Here, honey, it's chocolate. It'll keep the Dementors away. You should eat them."
It's true. It will keep the Dementors away.
So I had the big populist banner that I had painted for Raffenheim. So that thing is like 16 foot long by 6 foot tall banner. And it was still intact. It was still at our camp where our tent was, but the pole had snapped. And the tent that I had been in with Count Brian and Leah and Asteria, that's her name, and one other person, I can't remember the name right now, I'm terribly sorry. That tent had collapsed, and the only dry thing that was in it was my rapier case, which had my wool coat in it.
Oh, goodness.
So Cathal and Genevieve were already in the Anstioran royal cabin. They had been moved there, and they came to find me, found my coat, put my coat on me, took me back to the cabin. And so Miguel and Connell were in there, and a couple other folks. And what's funny is Miguel and Connell were the crown that gave me my laurel.
Nice.
And this is like, for those that don't know Gulf War, they have cabins that the royals get to reserve spots with their entourage. Well, the Ansturian one had summer camp bunk beds, because it's a summer camp. So they do like the summer camp bunk beds in there. And these are everything you have ever experienced with summer camp bunk beds. The top bunks have like the boards that go across, and then it's got something that pretends to be a mattress that goes over them. Well,
stimulants, yes.
Genevieve was up on the top. She's like also been Xanaxed. So she's like, because she and I have similar issues with wind. And so she's like a bundle of mess, and she just wanted all of her people in one place. Where are the people? Because we had driven all the way out there in a van. We rented a van, piled in the van, and drove all the way out there. So I get in there, and they basically stripped me out of the last of my white clothes, put me in Emmy's top and Duke Miguel's sweatpants. So I basically got to be in Duke Miguel's pants, but not really. And then I came up to the top bunk, and Genevieve was like, She had this face like this big, curled up in a ball, and I start talking. Talk, because I'm nervous and I'm just going to start talking and I won't stop talking. So she's piled glued to me like this. And Miguel, God's love this man. He is one of the best people. If you have not had a chance to meet His Grace Miguel, he's one of those knights in shining armor that you hear about in the stories, and he just is. He's genuinely good people, and I love him forever. And he climbed up to the top bunk across from where I was and just let me talk until I passed out. And I woke up in the morning in the same position that I was in when I started this mess, with Jambi is still like glued to me.
I'm beginning to wonder if y'all should have named this Gulf NATO or Gulf NATO, or if it should have been called the Xanax War.
Oh my God. It was like, we just needed to go back to New Orleans and drink more. That's
Yeah.
That takes care of everything right there.
What?
damn.
There you go. That's it.
And as per normal, you get me started with a story, you're in for 10 minutes because I'm just gonna talk.
Hey, it's all good. I remember when that happened, and I was literally monitoring social media right then and trying to get head counts on everybody I knew that was in that van.
Oh yeah, you were Kingdom Seneschal right then, weren't you?
No,
No.
I sit down as Kingdom Seneschal,
okay.
thank God. But I knew our people were out there.
Yeah.
I had heard about it, and I'm thinking, I will bail into Bertha faster than you can blink to go rescue my people, you know.
Fair.
But that's the beautiful part about being in the SEA is catastrophe happens and we don't run from it. We just collect everybody and we make sure we got our people, and we take care of each other in a variety of forms, even perfect strangers. I'm like,
Here, you're in need.
yeah, it's one of those things that we're like, oh, you had a 10th collapse? Okay, let me open up the trailer and what do I got here?
Which we do about every event.
Yeah, a few years ago, one of the college kids had their tent catch fire
At Estrella.
at Estrella.
Well, that's partially their fault for having a live candle in a nylon tent.
Well,
I don't disagree,
but they were in need.
they were in need, and
But we take care of it.
yeah, and we hadn't arrived to site. That was the year. Oh, that was the year I built the thrones.
Yes, we were
So
running late.
we did
because
not
of-
get to site until Friday. In the meantime, their graces had packaged.
They threw them in our tent.
Yeah, threw them in
initially.
our tent initially. That way they had a roof over their head, had some place to sleep. And Sigrid's telling me that it was Blake that had that happen.
Okay.
So, but that's what we do in the SEA. We go, oh, we have this empty tent right now. We're going to put you in here and make sure you're taken care of. We'll deal with the catastrophe in a minute.
Make sure the living people creature is okay.
Okay, and then worry about the
Because
stuff.
Material shit can be dealt with later and replaced. The living people creature
Are kind of are very important to all of us. Yes.
So
irreplaceable.
Exactly.
now, one of the things and some of the things that people don't know about you is you are what I would term a safe space. As you have termed me more than once, a panicky Southern bride. It happens. Trust me, when suddenly I just duck my head and literally I'm on a dead set mission, I'm usually aiming right for her to go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She's like, you're good. You're good. Here, have something to drink. You're good. So for those of you that need that somebody, Ari is a perfect person to have that moment that you go, I am so overwhelmed right this moment and I don't know what to do. And she's going to say, you're going to have something to drink. It may or may not be adult beverage, depending upon what's in her mug right that moment.
Calming fact.
Yes. You know, Sam's over here on the chat telling the story that Grimald the Faithful, I guess is what Blake's.
Yep.
Okay. Was out toddling around with the king's entourage while his tent was on fire.
Oh, he wasn't even there.
He wasn't even there.
Oh, now the rest of the story comes out.
Oh, I can't wait to give him. Ooh.
Ideas. We'll talk about it offline.
Yes.
Okay.
All I see is a scroll. Let's see if I can pick this up. On a scroll, a little tent, a little candle. We're gonna have a good time with this.
Just let it happen.
Just let it happen.
Just let it happen.
Ah, see, she got it.
Just let it happen.
Hey, Theory.
Yes. Oh God.
You're welcome.
Later.
Banana.
Oh. Okay. So, back to our topic.
What was
Good with one noise. I win.
I mean,
You do. You do. Oh, Lord. I think I just. You're my hero. Ever told you how awesome he is?
He must love you or something.
I think he does. Might have that moment.
self-preservation.
What else do you want to know?
Oh, Lord.
Oh my God. Let's see.
You got one?
Me?
Yeah, you.
What was your first Estrella?
Estrella 9.
You're Estrella 8.
Estrella 8.
So when did you move to Aytonville?
Yeah.
No, okay, wait. That is a loaded statement right there.
I was gonna say, really?
Okay. So when did you move to what is now known as Aytonville?
When did I move here? Properly living in Arizona, Aytonville, was in 2004.
Okay. And you originally moved down to Mons, right?
Yeah, I lived in Mons for 2 years.
And then you toddled your way to Ysgithrian.
Well, I'd been playing in Ysgithrian anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, I had been playing all over the kingdom. So coming from Onstiora, where you drive 3 hours to get to like a fire practice, the distances are day trip fun. Actually, to get to another Barony's fire practice, because we did have a fire practice. It's about 45 minutes away from where I lived in town. But we were pretty much Austin, Bringlad is equidistant between, or roughly equidistant time-wise, between Houston and Dallas. So we would do the triangle all the time to go to events and everything. So my idea of a day trip involves being in the car one way 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
So I moved to Aytonville. I live in Mons. It's 4.5 hours to Flag. I'm going. So people, when I first moved here, weren't entirely sure where I lived, because I was showing up at events in all corners of the state, because why not?
It's easy.
It's easy. And I was very frustrated with people who are like, we live in Phoenix and there's so much to do here. It's so long to drive to get to the other side of town. And I was like, Are you high? I understand their perspective now, having lived here and dealt with Phoenix traffic and how, oh, it's little LA. No wonder nobody wants to drive anywhere.
So I just sat here and quietly counted off at least 4 kingdoms that I know of that you lived in. Trimaris, Glenaban, Enstiora, and Aitenbelt. Did I miss it?
Outlands and Kaid.
Okay, so you hit 6 of the 19. Is your goal to go around the world eventually?
There is a strong campaign in Antir trying to convince me to move to Antir, and in 4 years I have the opportunity to make choices that maybe
Us too.
I may have to go beat up some Ontarians.
Hit really
I make me
hard. No.
very sad. I love my Ontarians.
Yes, but you're mine.
The Outlands got very upset when I moved to Onstiora too.
So you were given your laurel and Stiora, correct?
Correct.
And tell us about that journey.
Oh, so being an SDA kid comes with built-in issues, especially when you've done your art for your life. It is your life's pursuit, literally. Mine being manuscript arts is my life's pursuit. And I got very, very far along the path in the Outlands, and I moved from the Outlands before I could get my peerage there, basically. And I moved to Onstiora, and I had also had a lot of issues as an artist who knows my art and probably knows more about my art than people who know my art, and what works for me, that when I got to Onstiora and was getting started in doing my art, I had run-ins with kind of the bad side of the Laureate. There's good sides to the peerage, and overall we like to put ourselves forward as good and welcoming and open, but as with any group, there's always going to be those rough characters who have gotten lazy and like to sit on their laurels. As has been so eloquently put, there's very little difference between a toilet seat and a laurel wreath when you look at them the right way. Kind of like the only difference between a coronet and a walk stand is the direction. Walk stand, hat.
Oh, complacency. Yes.
So I ran into some of these people, and it made me very, very angry and very resentful. And I had a rough path because I had hit that place in your skill set where you know you're good enough, but having no peer to guide me, except for the peers who were trying to take credit for teaching me things I already knew, or looking for the supposed prize of graduating somebody into a peerage without having to do the work because they already know what they're doing. And I was smart enough and observant enough to not want to be part of that. And so I had interactions that made me very, very angry. And for everybody who's been on this path, if you feel this way, like Her Excellency said earlier, I'm a safe place because I've been there. I've had those feels, and you can talk to me. I'm not going to tell people. So by the time I got along far enough, it was pretty much one of those things that my peer, one of my peers, my first peer, my white scarf, is Master Robert McFarlane. He's a Pelican and he's a Master of Defense, and he was a white scarf in Onstiora, and we would have these what we call tailgate talks, where we'd literally sit on the tailgate of his truck, having a drink and just talking like you would want to with somebody who you need their advice and you just need to like get the shit out of your brain and have that conversation. So we would have our tailgate talks, and I was talking to him about how frustrated I was by all of it. And he had seen some of it and he had seen what had been going on. So Pennsic rolls around, and we're off to Pennsic with the kingdom. And Anstura does chili night, which is Wednesday night at Pennsic. They throw a big come get your chili and drinks and have a party kind of deal, which is fantastic. Well, Master Kenrick and Mr. Serafina, husband and wife, beautiful, beautiful people. I love these people. Run this or host it or put it together. They're basically the autocrat for chili night. Saint Serafina, she actually made this cornet. She is the person who will roll out to the rapier field at Pennsic with a tea tray and a silver tea service to serve the queen's tea, because she can. So Robert takes me over to my very first chili night. He's like, you have to come do this thing. It's what the kingdom does. Waltzes me in there to face with, I think, the biggest damn Viking I'd ever encountered in my life. He's huge. Just man. It's like looking at a bear in a Viking suit. I mean, it's just, he's big with this deep booming voice and a big grin and just warm. And he walks me right up to him and he goes, Ari, this is Master Kenrick of Bedwyr, and he is a pelican and a laurel, and he's been doing art, and he's a herald, and he's a bard, and he's fantastic. And he's like, well, hi, very nice to meet you, and blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, Kenrick, this is Ari. She hates all laurels, and walks off.
Oh, talk about being put on the spot.
And Kenrick says, tell me a story. And so 3 hours, I think, later, the party's like done its thing, moved its course. People are off in other camps now doing their thing. And he's still having a debate with me over all of this and my experiences. At which point, somewhere along the line, Serafina has come in. She's been feeding us drinks and food. And he managed at that point to argue me into being his apprentice. And before either of us could come to our drunken senses, Serafina grabs us both, drags us off to Midnight Madness on Merchant's Row, where an appropriate length of green silk is procured. She hems half of it. That is my apprentice belt. She takes the other half home to embroider his arms on it. And I got it like at the next event. Well, in a fit of pique, because I had been argued into this, I never actually sewed the two halves together. I only knotted them together at the corners and wore it that way until I got my laurel.
Nice. That's amazing. The reluctant apprentice.
That's exactly what that is.
I was argued into being an apprentice, and you know what? I am forever grateful, because he knew where I came from. He took the time to sit and argue with me over what I was really feeling about all of that. And he was a voice in a circle where I did not have a voice, where I had people who were dead set against me ever being, because of other people in that circle.
With that experience, and especially today with our access to information, social media, email, phone calls. I mean, we literally, especially where you're concerned, forget the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's the 6 degrees of Ari with you, because there isn't anywhere you can go that people don't know who you are or aren't connected to you in somehow. Yeah. When I first got, I saw the SEA merchants and I saw the Pelican from Serafina, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to have one of those. Okay.
Not
knowing who she was. And when I got the package in, I had one of the Pelicans I ordered and a laurel wreath. And I'm like, that's not what I ordered. I ordered 2 Pelicans. So I had messaged her And her and I just started chatting, talking. We made our own connections because in the package she had sent me some coins, and I asked the question, "Are you guys the Baron and Baroness over there?" And she's like, "Yeah, as a matter of fact." I was like, "Awesome. We're the Baron and Baroness over here, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "Oh, you know Ari."
Kind of.
Yeah.
I belong to Ari. That was my only response. I belong to Ari. And that's when it hit me. Forget 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's 6 degrees of Ari around here, because I can throw a stone and hit somebody that has a connection with you somewhere. But with all that being said, and back to the original question, with your experience of how that happened, moving from the Outlands to Ansteora and then hitting that brick wall, do you think any of that had to do with the fact that it was the move, or the move contributed to that?
So one of the things that was very contentious about my offer was that it was known that I was moving out of Kingdom in 2 months.
Okay.
I went from offer to Laurel in 2 weeks. Okay.
Unwedding much?
So and because of the layout store is so huge, Miguel was actually, his Majesty Miguel was actually an event in the north of the kingdom, and it was only Her Majesty Connell that was at the event where I got my laurel. But I think it was great. It all came together and it worked. But I think that part of the moving a lot, where I'm used to it. In fact, like every 10 years or so, my brain tells me I should be packing my house and moving. 8 to 10 years, I hit that I gotta relocate kind of bug. And it's hard to get past. It's like a junkie, like getting hit with something. You're just wired to move. So I want to say that it was hard, because I had it pre-programmed into my head that I had a very limited time in which to prove myself, even though I could have lived in Ansteora for the rest of my life, right? There was no reason for me to have to move except for the economy. But I had a time clock that was ticking down telling me I had to get a move on. And I had hit the point where not only was I angry, but I had given up. And so it was kind of a collection of Robert going, I sense this and this person can't give up because we need this person, right? And introducing me to somebody who was stubborn enough to get me to listen and gentle enough to not push my buttons in a way to make me feel like they were trying to do anything except give me a voice where I didn't have one, right? And guide me in the lesson of manners. So people know my rules. My rules come from all of this leading up to it, right? Because I've made all of those mistakes.
So with all those experiences, do you find yourself, especially with the amount of information we have access to, do you find yourself being a little more open-minded to what people have done in other kingdoms in terms of their body of work, given what you went through?
Absolutely. Actually, I look at the peerages as an SCA award. This is not a kingdom award. Being a peer is not you're only a peer of your kingdom. You're a peer of the society. And honestly, I think in some ways it makes me a little bit more particular, because I want to know that that person has word fame outside their local area, and preferably that they travel. I would like a peer to have gone outside their kingdom and experienced, the way arts or the way service or the way combat is done outside their kingdom, and not just for a happy holiday weekend. Like, go for the big events and show that you travel to those events, because when you are a peer, like you said, I mean, you could go just about anywhere and run into somebody who knows me, right?
Yeah.
Same. And
Yeah.
that's because part of it is moving a lot, but part of it is that I travel. I go out of kingdom. I go to these different events. I build those relationships, and I get my name known.
Yep.
And I'm always willing to be approached to talk about those things. And I would like to see somebody who's being considered for a peerage to have done those things, shared your knowledge. Now in this digital age, it's easier for us to do digital learning and get our name out there, but that means that I would like to see you do those things. It's harder for a service peer necessarily to do that, but when you are going to be a service peer, I would like to know that you are actually serving the entire kingdom and not just your area, because your job as a peer is to serve in support of everybody.
Yeah, a much bigger, and I didn't quite understand that. And even though you and I'd had those private conversations about that exact topic multiple times, and I thought I understood. It wasn't until the first time I was in the Outlands, I was at Battlemore. I was newly minted, so to speak. I'm in camp, and Her Grace Gabriella comes walking past my camp and says, "Come on, there's a pelican circle."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, I'm not from here." And she goes, "You're still a pelican.
You're a pelican
of the society." And I knew that was just because I'm brand new peer. I think my feathers hadn't stopped being sticky yet at the time this happened. But then, I follow behind Her Grace. I go to this pelican circle, and I'm sitting there, and I experience a completely different world, a completely different way the Outlands does things compared to the way we do things here in Ayton Belt. And that's when everything you had been trying to tell me for years suddenly solidified. I was like, oh, that difference in culture and how to interact in that culture, but you are still a part of that culture.
Yeah.
And you had been trying to tell me, and then all of a sudden it was just that, oh my God, this is what she's been trying to tell me this whole time. And so I have now developed a different appreciation from that serving your local group to serving your kingdom as a whole, but then being outside of that sphere as well, that 6 degrees of separation in any direction. Which for me, it took a little bit. I mean, you and I had had those conversations for a long time. And then all of a sudden I'm in a situation where I'm like, oh my God, this is what she's been trying to tell me.
And it's genuinely, it is the hardest piece of being a peer to explain to anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to feel it. I mean, because we honestly, we're so insular. The majority of the SCA, the majority of people won't leave their kingdom.
Yes.
It won't. And it could be economic factors, it could be cultural factors, it could just be that it's just not their thing to travel, and that's okay. But when you were talking about that ephemeral thing that is a cure, it is the person who's willing to go outside of that comfort zone and make the entirety of this their home.
Yes.
And I'm saying this is the SCA as a whole, and learn that your culture, your kingdom culture isn't everything.
Yes.
So you have to know that you may be a peer, but you have to have enough respect to sit back, go outside your comfort zone, stand back, be quiet, and watch another group function enough so that you learn the manners.
Yes.
And
Yep.
then you can interact. And it's that level of respect that translates and is the difference between a tourist and a peer.
Yes.
Absolutely. And and I'm watching the chat right this moment, and Sigrid makes the comment that you can do service in the digital world too, which yes, you absolutely can. I'm going to put a caveat on that though. The world doesn't just exist in the digital world.
Correct.
Just the world does not just exist in this kingdom alone. Our world is much bigger than that, and knowing how to interact in all aspects of that world. Going to my first Ysgithrian event, I was a little blown away because they did things so differently from us. And I remember sitting in the back of court going, so do I huzzah here or no? So instead my option was to just be quiet and watch and observe, because if I huzzahed, and I didn't know if anybody in this group would take offense to it, I wasn't willing to take that chance. Floki makes the comment, lots of people don't leave their barony. He's absolutely right. However, and being Kingdom Seneschal here in the kingdom opened my eyes to this, is the cultural differences. This isn't just culturally from kingdom to kingdom. Cultural differences exist right here in our own kingdom, from the way Mons does things, to the way Ysgithrian does things, to the way, all the way up to Ered Soul. Every barony has their different culture, and knowing you can't blow into Ered Soul and go, well, Ysgithrian does it like this,
Yeah, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah, that's not gonna work at all. Somebody is gonna get upset.
Nobody wants to hear about it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So, we talked about the crushed velvet newbie night. What is one of your all-time favorite memories in the SCA?
Oh,
I know you have a lifetime to draw on.
I know. I'm like, trying to think. It's really tough. I think I have a couple, actually. One of them happy, one of them sad. So I'll start with the sad one. A friend of mine, rapier fighter, had passed away, and it was before Pensick, and so we a bunch of friends of mine and I, Benedict, they had done his ashes, and one of the things he wanted was some of his ashes on the Pensick rapier field. So we did that. And then Volgamut was playing, and I'm like devastated, but try and hold it together. So I waltzed my ass over to Volgamut, their performance on Merchant's Row, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening, and then just kind of letting the music happen to me. And then I went for a walk through the bog down around the lake, and I encountered the Viking ship. And so I was able to get his name into the Viking ship, and then they set it afloat and it set fire to it, basically. And so that was a very beautiful kind of memory. And then a really happy one is actually in two parts. So there is one of my favorite memories. I was still a cadet. This was in Onstiora at Barony Ravensfort Investiture. This was the court that would not end. Most literally, the court that would not end. This court started at 10 o'clock in the morning and did not finish until 6:30 at night. Okay, so this is South Texas in the summertime. So it's 93 degrees and humid, and we're up under the trees, but we're sitting court.
Oh no.
And the cadets that I ran with, we referred to ourselves as a dingo pack because jackals don't turn on their wounded fast enough. So you just keep that in mind. And we are also renowned pranksters. Good pranks, not bad pranks. We don't hurt anybody. The point of it was to have fun and get a good laugh out of it. So the cadets also hold the Princess's Blade and the banners. And for the crowns for the queen, because they're the queen's people, but we are the princess's people because we are the cadets, and so we have the banners. And we're holding the banners. And this is a Duncan and Larissa court. And it started, and everybody is coming up going, and I remember when you did this beautiful thing for me, and here's a gift. And this was going for hours. And we had the Kingdom Court. So these are courts where in Osceola, because it's so big and you're trying to get all the people when you get there, because you have a long way to go to get to the next place, you're talking 50 scrolls are given out. Between 25 and 50, right? I was at Steps Warlord where they gave out like 100 scrolls.
Oh man.
I had to write the names on all of them. So we're back at Ravensfort and we're standing there and we're holding the thing, and I'm working basically as a lady in waiting and making sure that there's cold water and everything for the court that never ends. And I'm shuttling back and forth to chat with my buddies over, my cadet buddies, and then I shuttle my ass back and I make sure that there's water and everything. And His Excellency Penderin of Bringlot is seated in his throne next to His Majesty Duncan, and Larissa's on the other side, and then the Baron and Baroness of Ravensfort over there. I'm over here on this side. She and them are over there. And so every time I walk past, I look down, and Penderin is follically challenged with a beautiful coronet. And it's all padded, and he's not wearing a coif. So all you're seeing is this glorious, shiny, follically challenged head in a padded coronet, glistening with sweat, looking like a bottom of a dry wading pool. And he's in deep conversation with His Majesty Duncan. And so I wander back over it, and I explain to Cadet Avery, now Master Avery, what I have seen and my opinion of such. And I have a brass pitcher of ice water in my hand and a goblet. And the pitcher of ice water is just sweating. Just the condensation is like rolling off of this thing, right? And then Cadet Edward, who's holding the banner, comes over and he's like, what? So I explained to Cadet Edward, and now it's me and Ed and Avery all having a conversation. And the front line of attendees in the court, the audience is going like a dog listening to a high-pitched noise.
What? Yeah.
Because there's 3 cadets talking animatedly. And then we all look over at the crowns, and then we look back and we start talking animatedly again. And then I hear my name, and so I run off and I go do the thing. And the crowd relaxes. And then I come back. And we start talking animatedly again. And I had set down the goblet. I still had the pitcher of ice water in my hand because it's cold. Cool. And I pour the guys some ice water. And then the audience, of course, is from the outside, and you can see their eyes start to get big round about the time Ed reaches into his pouch, pulls out his wallet, pulls out a $1 bill. Avery snatches it, rips it in half, and hands me half. At which I tuck it into my cleavage and go bouncing back to court. And I pick up my goblet again, and I refill the glasses. And I'm standing behind Penderin, and I look over at the boys, and they're like, and the second row of the audience has now got the same expression as the first row of the audience are going, because they don't know what's happening. All they know is something, the cadets got bored. We're 4 hours into this court. The cadets are bored. And they've been talking, and money changed hands.
Something's up.
Yep.
And I am standing behind His Excellency Penderin Baron of Bringlad with my pitcher of ice water and my goblet. And I look at the boys and I look down and I pour the water in the goblet and the audience is going, and I take a sip and the audience goes, and then I refill it. And I stand there for a little bit and I look at the boys and the boys are like, and I go, sip, jump. It was this glorious wading pool, just long enough for him to levitate out of the throne. Court stops. I go bouncing back over to Avery, who hands me the other half of the bill, and I put it in my cleavage, at which point Her Majesty calls us over.
Oh,
So
you're in trouble now.
Passes the banner, the princess's banner off, and the blade off to the next cadet, and we get called over. And I still have the ice water in my paws because I still have the pitcher. And Larissa starts with me. Her Majesty Larissa starts with me. My dear sweet lady would never do such terrible things without being made to do so by horrible influences. She is not to blame here. She is only an instrument. Come here. And so I pass my pitcher of ice water off to Bendarin, who takes it from me. And I go sit in front of Larissa, looking all sweet and innocent and pitiful. And then Edward is the next one called up. And of course, he's the good cadet. He has made it his business to be the good cadet. It also didn't hurt that he made sausages for everybody, like proper homemade sausages. So he is forgiven and sent on his way. He was just the wallet. Avery's the bad cadet. Avery gets called up. And because he is dutifully scared of his lady Gwyneth, he takes off his beautiful doublet, shucks it so he's down to nothing on his way up to his white shirt, while Pendarin is making this big speech about he's the bad cadet and he's such a terrible influence and he was going to be punished and all of these things. And everybody knew what was coming. He had a pitcher of ice water in his hand. And right as he gets up there and Pendarin's, and Avery is dropping to his knees and proclaims at the top of his lungs, because he's a theater kid. So the people in the back of court, this is an open air court, could hear his words. Shriv me of my sins, O noble Baron, and Pendarin could not get the water back in the pitcher. His ice water bath, it was glorious. He was forgiven of his sins by the Baron. And I got $1.
I was gonna say, you scooted right on out of that one like nobody's business.
Yes.
Oh my God.
But this is what happens when the cadets get bored.
Fair.
So that is the funny one, and also with being the cadets, I was part of the crew, the Dingo Pack, that created the Princess's Blade, the first Princess's Blade on Ciara, which is the sword, because Daphith and Octavia were sitting the throne, and Daphith had his squire, his guard, who had this beautiful spear. And she looked over and went, why don't I get a sharp thing? And the cadets went, we can fix that. And we all got together and organized and pooled the money and got a rapier. And I had the furniture for this rapier gilded.
Nice.
Like gold plated, and did the enamel work on it. And we presented to her at a Steps Warlord the very first Princess's Blade. and only because the cadets owned it. Technically, the 5 cadets that created it owned it. It was ours and the princesses, and every princess after that, the cadets carried that blade, and only the cadets had it, similar to how the knights here in Haydenvelt have the kingdom sword, the sword of the king. Same reason, but it was the cadets had the princess's blade, and we would carry it, and we made sure that there was somebody always with the princess to guard her with this weapon. And then it got old enough that it was eventually retired, like 14 years later, and the cadets commissioned from Castile a brand new princess's blade, and they retired the old one. I wasn't able to go to the event, unfortunately, but we gave our sword to Octavia, so she has the blade now, and that's one of those Stardust things that take years to come about, but it's very cool.
Yeah.
And we made the princess cry.
That's even better.
Yeah.
Those are those moments. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for joining us tonight. It has been a blast. We could still keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest. We could keep going.
You talk all night.
We could. So, but we're going to go ahead and wrap this all thing up. Mr. Sari, do you have any parting words for everyone?
Just be good to each other and try not to be too hard on yourselves. I mean, we're going to buckle up. We got some months to go, but we will all see each other again.
Yep.
Wonderful. And guys, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, you guys can ask questions in the live chat, so next time we'll be logging in with Mistress Darany on September 19th. Tune in for that. Other than that, everyone have a great night. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
all.